Our next speaker is Ralf Kohler. I'm happy to introduce a fellow ARAID researcher again. He is a part of ARAID since 2011. He has been working before in Germany at the University of Berlin and of Marburg, and has been working at the University of Southern Denmark. He does a lot of translational research related to target identification and validation, and he's involved in translational preclinical studies. His presentation is entitled Ion Channels as Drug Targets in Chronic Inflammatory Skin Disease.
Dear John, thank you very much for introducing me. I would like to add that we are a quite large new group recognized by the government here in Aragon, and it is called MESIC. And what does MESIC mean? It means that we look at the mechanisms of disease, especially of chronic disease, and that we want to get new knowledge about these diseases to later on to do more translational studies. That means to do also clinical studies, drug development, to improve actually the treatment standards for patients that for who we do not have quite good treatment strategies right now. This covers studies in cardiology, innovation in cardiology, and these are mainly devices. Another large part of the group is dedicated to rare diseases for which we sometimes do not have really any treatments. And another one goes more with drug development and production, and it is a sort of experimental pharmacology. Today I've picked one of the projects which I think they are interesting with some solutions, and it goes with, as John already said, it goes with ion channels. Ion channels are important in all organ functions, especially in the brain. We need them to think, and in the heart we need them to beat. And these ion channels sometimes play a really big role in chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is a sort of a complication of almost any disease. In cancer we have an inflammatory component, in cardiology we have, or in cardiac disease we have a component which is this inflammation. So what we want to do is we want to develop drugs against new targets which we find especially in the tissue of diseased patients. So we work more in a translational way, find a target, in this case here it is an ion channel, and then we do classical drug development, we do screening assays and come up with a new compound, and then we patent such compounds, and later on we try to sell these compounds to companies which want to develop these compounds further. No? On the other hand, we do develop also models of disease. This is very important. You have to test that your drugs are functional, and the classical way is that you do that first in vitro, then you go to an animal model, and here we produce an animal model which shows the dysfunction of an ion channel, and the outcome is pretty clear. You end up with a strong atopic dermatitis on the right-hand side, and with hyperkeratosis, it looks also like a sort of psoriasis, and the mice are really not happy with this and normally die within 2 weeks. But the good thing is that we can use this model to study the involvement of certain cytokines in it, and then we can use this model also to test our compounds. And here we have a compound in mind, which is cenicarboc. This is good for repurposing of a drug. And what we see is that these compounds are quite capable of reducing interleukin levels. No? Okay, this is the more experimental part. More important is then to translate this into the clinics. On the one hand, the drug development of a new molecular identity is quite complicated and very expensive. Only large pharmaceutical industry can do that. No? So we come up with some other solutions which are more let's say, natural compounds. And why do we do that? Because we can do cosmetical trials with such compounds. This is quite cheap, quite easy, and proceed like this. And here we did a trial with patients with psoriasis. Psoriasis is a quite common disease. Almost 4% of the people here in Spain is affected. So, and it's also important to know that 50% of these people are undertreated. So there's also a huge demand for new treatments for these patients. And that could also be, of course, very interesting when you go later into the markets. So what we do here is we did not use a small molecule here, but a formulation of certain natural compounds. And what we see in a cosmetical trial, that when we treat here one lady, she has a typical plaque here on the elbow. Now, after 3 weeks, we see already a substantial improvement, and 2 months later, you can't see any. The plaque is hardly, or the lesion is hardly visible anymore. So we have some good clinical data to move on in this project. And what we are doing right now is that we produce a cream for these conditions, and we are now in clinical stage 2B for psoriasis, and we do the local manufacturing of these creams here in Aragon. And later on, when it comes to transfer, we of course seeking partners who are willing to go on with this. Thank you very much for your attention.